The three Hawthorne sisters didn't know that I had been reborn too. What they knew even less was that this time, even if they knelt and begged me, I wouldn't spare them a single glance. The heavy scent of sandalwood in my adoptive father Arthur Hawthorne's study roused my consciousness from an endless darkness and hunger. I looked down at my own hands, clean, long, with well-defined knuckles, filled with youthful strength, not the withered claws of my past life starved to skin and bone while imprisoned in a basement. I was back. Back to the eve of my 21st birthday. Back before the whole tragedy began. Sincere, have you remembered everything I told you? Mr. Hawthorne sat behind his desk looking at me with earnest concern. Isabel, Sophia, and Rosalind might be a bit spoiled, but their hearts are in the right place. After you choose your wife at the birthday banquet and inherit the family business, you must treat her well. I sneered inwardly but maintained my usual meek and respectful expression, nodding. I understand, Uncle Arthur. Hearts in the right place. Good enough to conspire to imprison and starve me to death, just to monopolize the fortune that should have belonged to their husbands. Mr. Hawthorne waved his hand in satisfaction. Go on, they should be waiting for you outside. I turned and pushed open the heavy, solid wood door. I knew that on the other side were the three women who had pushed me into hell in my past life. Isabel, Sophia, and Rosalind Hawthorne. In my last life, when they saw me emerge from the study, their eyes were filled with venomous disgust. The eldest, Isabel, would cross her arms and say coldly, Sincere, Blackwood, you're just an adopted son of the Hawthorne family. Are you so shameless that you run to my father's study every day just to chase after a woman? The youngest, Rosalind, would cover her mouth and giggle, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Isabel, keep your voice down. Brother Sincere is sensitive. You'll hurt his feelings. And Sophia Hawthorne, the woman I had loved my entire life, would look at me with utter impatience as if shooing away a fly. Sincere, Blackwood, did you go tattling to my father again? Let me tell you, even if my father forces me, I'll have to seriously consider whether I want to marry a man with no ambition like you. I took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and prepared to face the humiliation that was already etched into my bones. However, the scene outside the door made all my prepared responses freeze on the spot. The door opened. The three Hawthorne sisters standing in the hallway turned their heads in unison to look at me. On their faces there was no disgust, no mockery, and certainly no impatience. Instead, there was a complex expression I had never seen before, a mixture of extreme shock, terror, wild joy, and uncontrollable remorse. The three of them looked as if they were seeing an avenging ghost claw its way back from hell, and at the same time a priceless treasure that had been lost and found again, especially Sophia. Her almond-shaped eyes, usually half-closed in arrogance, were now wide open, her pupils trembling violently. Her lips quivered, and her face was as white as a sheet, as if she were about to faint. What was happening? My heart clenched. A ridiculous yet highly probable thought shot through my mind. Before I could process it, everything changed. Sincere, a shrill, tearful scream shattered the tranquility of the Hawthorne mansion. Sophia, like a madwoman, charged at me recklessly and grabbed my arm with a death grip. Her nails dug deep into my flesh, her strength astonishing. I'm sorry, Sincere, I'm sorry, she babbled incoherently, tears streaming down her beautiful face like broken pearls. We were wrong, we were so wrong, please, I'm begging you, please forgive us. I was stunned by her sudden outburst. The eldest sister, Isabel, stood frozen in place, her face even paler than Sophia's. She leaned against the wall, her body swaying as her lips trembled, seemingly wanting to say something but unable to utter a single word. The youngest, Rosalind, was even more dramatic. She clapped a hand over her mouth, tears gushing from her eyes, her gaze filled with the terrified relief of someone who had survived a catastrophe. How utterly absurd the three women who had cast me aside like garbage in my past life were now clinging to me as if I were their last hope, weeping inconsolably. The icy scorn in my heart almost overflowed. I see. So I wasn't the only one who came back. They came back too, and by the looks of it, they not only remembered how they had killed me, but they also remembered their own tragic fates after my death. I shook off Sophia's hand with such force that she staggered back 2 steps, bumping into Rosalind. Miss Hawthorne II. My voice was colder than it had ever been in my past life, devoid of any warmth. What is this madness? That address, Miss Hawthorne II, was so distant and formal it was like a bucket of ice water poured over the three sisters' heads. Sophia's crying stopped abruptly. She looked at me in disbelief, her eyes filled with hurt and panic. Sincere, why are you calling me that? She asked, her voice trembling. I pulled my lips into a humorless smile. What else? What should I call you? My future sister-in-law? No three voices screamed in unison, filled with terror. Isabel finally found her voice. She hurried forward, forcing a smile that was uglier than a grimace. Sincere, don't joke with Sophia. She just hasn't seen you in a while and missed you too much. Missed me? Missed me so much that in our past life she locked me in the basement and listened to my agonized cries as I starved to death. Rosalind quickly chimed in, wiping her tears and cautiously tugging at my sleeve, her voice soft and pleading. That's right, Sincere boy. My sister was just overwhelmed. Don't be angry with her, okay? Looking at their hypocritical faces made my stomach churn. In my past life, they had used these masks, arrogant, gentle, or cute, to wrap me around their fingers until I lost everything, including my life. This life, did they think they could erase everything by playing the same old tricks? I ignored them and turned to go back to my room. Sincere, don't go. Sophia lunged again, this time wrapping her arms around my waist from behind, burying her face in my back and sobbing loudly. Please, don't ignore me. I know I was wrong. I really know I'll never love Ethan Miller again. I only love you. I'll only marry you in this life. Believe me, please believe me one more time, Ethan Miller. Hearing that name, my fingers, hanging by my side, trembled slightly. That was the other man who had ruined my life. I didn't move, letting her hold me, but my voice was as cold as ice shards. Sophia Hawthorne, have you forgotten? In our last life, you said the same thing. You said you only loved me. Then you turned around and were writhing in our new bed with the gardener's son. The moment my words fell, Sophia's sobs were cut short and her entire body went rigid. The color drained from Isabel's and Rosalind's faces as well. They stared at me in terror, as if looking at some unbelievable monster. Slowly, one by one, I pried Sophia's fingers off me. I turned around, looking down at her tear-streaked face, and said, word by word, so, save your cheap tears and your belated remorse. As far as I'm concerned, your show is over. My words were like a blade tempered in ice, stabbing viciously into the hearts of the three Hawthorne sisters. Every trace of color drained from their faces, even the last pretense of it vanishing. Sophia stood stiffly, trembling like a leaf in an autumn wind. Her lips opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. So, he remembered too. He knew everything. This realization was more devastating than losing their entire fortune and ending up on the streets in their past life. If Sincere didn't know, they could still pretend. They could make amends. They could use every trick in the book to tie him to their side again. But he knew. He knew about their betrayal, their cruelty, and how they had personally pushed him into the abyss. Didn't that make everything they were doing now a complete and utter joke in his eyes? I couldn't be bothered to look at their grief-stricken faces any longer. I turned and walked toward my room. Each step was steady and firm, a world away from the Sincere Blackwood of the past life who was always chasing after them, his very gait an act of appeasement. Sincere Isabel's trembling voice came from behind me, tinged with a plea I had never heard from her before. Where are you going? To my room, I answered without turning back. Should I stay here and enjoy the spectacular performance of you three actresses? A dead silence followed. I reached my room and slammed the door shut with a bang, shutting out those three nauseating faces. The world was finally quiet. But that quiet didn't last long. The next morning, as soon as I stepped out of my room, I saw Isabel standing at my door, dressed in a sharp business suit and holding a file. She had dark circles under her eyes, clearly having not slept a wink. Seeing me, she immediately forced a stiff smile. Sincere, good morning. I contacted a top investment team on Wall Street for you. This is the asset management plan they've tailored for you. The inheritance your parents left you can't just sit there. I'll help you. My affairs are no concern of Miss Hawthorne the First, I cut her off coldly, moving to walk past her and down the stairs. Isabel's body stiffened, the smile barely clinging to her face. She followed me, refusing to give up. Sin, I just want to help you. I don't have any other motive. I stopped and looked back at her, my eyes filled with ridicule. Help me? Like you helped me manage my fortune in our last life until it all became yours. Isabel's face flushed crimson. Shame and humiliation made her almost unable to stand. I ignored her and walked straight down the stairs. In the dining room, Sophia was wearing an ill-fitting apron, fumbling around in the kitchen. The air was thick with the smell of something burning. When she saw me come down, her face lit up as if she'd seen her savior. She quickly ran over, carrying a plate of something so blackened it was unrecognizable. "Sincere, you're awake. Come and try this. I made you breakfast with my own hands." Her face was smudged with flour, and her hair was a mess, completely devoid of the refined elegance of the renowned painter she was. She looked at me ingratiatingly, her eyes filled with humble expectation. I glanced at the plate of charcoal-grilled unidentified object, and a wave of nausea washed over me. In our past life, she couldn't even be bothered to pour a glass of water for me, and now she was cooking for me? How laughable. "I don't eat trash," I said expressionlessly, walking straight to the dining table and picking up a piece of toast prepared by the butler. Sophia froze, holding the plate. The hands that had painted countless stunning works were now trembling slightly. Her eyes reddened, and tears began to well up again. Rosalind, who was sitting at the table, saw this and quickly stood up, diligently pouring me a glass of milk, her voice so soft it was cloying. "Brother Sincere, don't be angry with our sister. This is her first time cooking, and it was all for you. Just take one bite, please, just one." I picked up the glass of milk but didn't drink it. I just looked at her calmly. "You turned down the audition for the movie Splendor this morning?" Rosalind was stunned for a moment, then nodded furiously. Yes, I turned it down. Nothing is more important than you, Brother Sincere." Splendor was the film that had won her the Best Actress award in her past life. She had given up such an opportunity just to please me. The cold sneer in my heart grew stronger. The more they acted like they cared about me, the more it proved how terrified they were of losing the Hawthorne family fortune that came with me. "Is that so?" I put down the milk glass and stood up. "A pity. Everything you're doing is, in my eyes, completely meaningless." After saying that, I walked toward the villa's main door. Just then, a gentle voice came from the direction of the garden. "Sophia, you're all home?" It was Ethan Miller. He was dressed in clean casual wear, a bright smile on his face, his eyes clear, looking just as harmless as he did when I first met him in our past life. He was here, the man who had conspired with them to kill me. I stopped and turned with great interest, wanting to see how these three reborn sisters would deal with the idealized love who had ruined everything for them. Sure enough, the moment they saw Ethan Miller, the sisters' expressions changed drastically. It wasn't joy nor shyness, but a ferocious grimace mixed with overwhelming hatred and deep-seated fear. Ethan was about to step closer, but he didn't get to finish his sentence. Crack! A sharp, resounding slap landed squarely on Ethan Miller's face. The one who struck was Sophia. She was like an enraged lioness, her eyes bloodshot, using all her strength. Ethan staggered from the blow, 5 clear fingerprints instantly appearing on his fair cheek. He clutched his face, looking at Sophia in utter disbelief, his eyes immediately turning red. "Who let you show up here?" Sophia's voice was shrill and venomous, filled with endless loathing. "Get out, you disgusting liar! Get out of the Hawthorne house!" Ethan was completely bewildered. He looked pleadingly at Isabel and Rosalind, hoping they would speak up for him. However, Isabel just stared at him with a gaze so cold it was arctic and said slowly, "Ethan Miller, it seems my father's decision to fire your father was absolutely correct. The Hawthorne family does not welcome people with crooked minds." Rosalind was even more direct. She walked up to Ethan, her eyes filled with disgust. "I must have been blind to ever think you were pitiful. A person like you isn't even fit to polish Brother Sincere's shoes. Don't let us see you again, or we'll beat you every single time." Ethan was blindsided by this sudden turn of events. He couldn't understand how the 3 sisters, who had been so kind and caring just a few days ago, had suddenly become like this. He looked on the verge of tears, the picture of a grievously wronged victim. In my past life, seeing this might have sent me into a rage, thinking they were putting on a show for me. But now, I was just a cold spectator to this farce. I knew their hatred for Ethan Miller was real. Because of this man, they had lost everything in their past life. They hit him, cursed him, and drove him away, all as a performance of loyalty to me, to show me their resolve to turn over a new leaf. How pathetic and laughable. I turned, no longer watching the chaos, and strode out of the villa's main gate. The brilliant sunlight shone on me, but it carried no warmth. Behind me were Ethan's tearful protests and the sisters' even harsher curses. They thought that by eliminating Ethan, the root of all evil, they could get back on the right track. They were wrong. The real root of all evil wasn't Ethan Miller. It was their own insatiable, selfish hearts. And in this life I would not give them another chance. Their deep affection was more disgusting to me than poison. I walked out of the Hawthorne villa, leaving the absurd farce completely behind me. As I walked aimlessly down the tree-lined street, my phone vibrated softly. It was a text message from a name I had pinned to the top of my contacts but had ignored for far too long in my past life, Willow Hawthorne. Brother Sincere, your birthday is coming up. I designed a suit for you as a gift. It should have been delivered by now, so please check for it. Reading the message, it felt as if a small pebble had been dropped into the icy lake of my heart, sending out gentle ripples. Willow Hawthorne, the adopted daughter of the Hawthorne family, a girl who had been frail and sickly since childhood, always staying quietly in a corner, with almost no presence at all. In my past life, when I was universally condemned and my reputation was in tatters, she was the only one who dared to walk up to me and say softly, "Brother Sincere, I don't believe you're that kind of person." After I was framed by Isabel and barely escaped from a hospital conducting human experiments, it was also her who secretly brought me medicine and food. And after I died, it was she, this seemingly most fragile girl, who collected all the evidence of the 3 Hawthorne sisters' crimes, sending them to prison one by one and avenging my death. I owed her too much. Unlike in my past life, when I would have swiped the message away without a thought, I immediately dialed her number. The phone rang a few times before it was answered. Her voice, as cool and gentle as ever, came through. "Brother Sincere, it's me." My own voice softened unconsciously, a change I didn't even notice myself. "Willow, is it cold in the capital? How is your health?" There was a moment of silence on the other end, as if she were surprised by my sudden concern. After a few seconds, she answered softly, "It's fine, I'm used to it." "Brother, why are you—" "You have to come back for the birthday banquet," I interrupted, my tone leaving no room for argument. "Okay," she replied softly. After hanging up, the rage that had been simmering in me since my rebirth was soothed considerably by that short conversation. The person I would marry in this life was her. That evening, I returned to the Hawthorne residence. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne had returned from their trip abroad, and the family was preparing to have dinner together. The atmosphere at the dining table was bizarre to the extreme. Isabel, Sophia, and Rosalind were like 3 well-trained servants, diligently serving me food and pouring my soup. "Sincere, try this. These are matsutake mushrooms flown in from France. They're good for you. Brother Sincere, have some soup. I had the kitchen simmer this all afternoon. Sincere, eat more. You've gotten thinner recently." Their concern made me feel like I was sitting on pins and needles. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, seated at the head of the table, were both perplexed and pleased by their daughter's 180-degree transformation. Mrs. Hawthorne was beaming, looking at me lovingly. "Sincere, look how sensible the girls are now. Your birthday is just around the corner. I've already scouted out a few venues for the wedding banquet. Have you decided which one you're going to choose as your wife?" As soon as she said that, the 3 sisters' movements froze. They all turned to look at me in unison, their eyes filled with nervousness, anticipation, and pleading. Before I could speak, the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, came over with a steaming tureen of the chef's specialty soup. She was still Ethan Miller's aunt. I caught her in the corner of my eye, and a thought flashed through my mind. Sure enough, just as she walked behind me, her hand accidentally slipped, and the entire pot of scalding hot soup tipped over, heading straight for my back in my past life. That pot of soup caused severe burns on my back, leaving me bedridden for half a month. And this time it seemed history was about to repeat itself. However, in that split second, the unexpected happened again. Watch out, Brother Sincere. Sophia and Rosalind, who were sitting beside me, screamed and lunged forward almost as a reflex. They flanked me, using their own backs and arms to shield me completely. Sizzle, the scalding soup drenched their expensive dresses, seeping through the thin fabric and burning their skin with a sickening sound. Both of them let out pained grunts, their faces instantly turning pale as they grimaced in agony. But even so, they held their positions, shielding me, their first instinct to turn and look at me anxiously. "Sincere, Are you okay? Did you get burned? Isabel shot up from her seat in terror, rushing over to check on me frantically. The entire dining room descended into chaos. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne stood up in shock, furiously reprimanding the helpless Mrs. Gable, and I, surrounded by the three women, felt not a shred of gratitude, only endless scorn and icy coldness. How deeply moving. To regain my trust, they were willing to resort to such a self-harm ploy. Using their own bodies to shield me from disaster. What a magnificent performance. Gently but with undeniable force, I pushed Sophia and Rosalind away. Large blisters were already forming on their arms, a shocking sight. I ignored their pained moans and their "I'd do anything for love" expressions of injury. I simply walked over to the stunned Mrs. Gable, calmly picked up the soup ladle from the floor and handed it to her. "Be more careful next time, Mrs. Gable," I said in a flat tone. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, I took out my phone and, in front of them all, made a video call to Willow Hawthorne. Soon, Willow's elegant and slightly frail face appeared on the screen. I turned to the screen, my face breaking into a gentle smile they had never seen before, an expression I had never shown anyone in the Hawthorne family. "Willow, are you asleep?" Willow seemed surprised by the sudden video call and paused for a moment. "Not yet. Brother, what's going on over there? It sounds noisy." "It's nothing," I said softly, deliberately ignoring the gasps from Sophia and Rosalind behind me. "Just a small accident at home. I didn't startle you, did I?" On the other side of the screen, Willow shook her head, her clear eyes filled with concern. "As long as you're okay." "I'm fine," I said, smiling, my gaze so gentle it could melt ice. "You should rest early and take your medicine on time. Wait for me. I'll come to the Capitol to see you." "Okay." After I hung up, the dining room was dead silent. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne stared at me, dumbfounded, seemingly unable to comprehend why I would ignore my two sisters who were injured for my sake, yet shower concern on an adopted daughter far away in the capital. As for Isabel, Sophia, and Rosalind, they collapsed into their chairs as if all their strength had been drained. They looked at the burning wounds on their arms, then recalled the extreme tenderness on my face during the video call. A coldness more piercing than the hot oil seeped from the depths of their hearts, instantly freezing them to the bone. Their desperate protection, their self-inflicted sacrifice in my eyes, was apparently less important than a single casual inquiry to Willow Hawthorne. At that moment, jealousy and panic, like two venomous snakes, gnawed at their hearts. They finally realized that something had completely, irrevocably, spun out of control. That night's farce ended with Sophia and Rosalind being rushed to a private hospital to treat their burns. I, on the other hand, finished my dinner calmly, as if nothing had happened. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne tried to question me several times, but my detached and distant gaze silenced them. For the first time, they realized that this adopted son they had raised had become a stranger, so unfamiliar that he even inspired a hint of fear. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Hawthorne mansion was almost suffocating. Sophia and Rosalind, with bandages on their arms, would look at me with mournful, helpless eyes, trying to evoke a shred of pity from me. Unfortunately, my heart had been forged harder than steel by the hunger and despair of my past life. Their conventional attempts at appeasement, even their self-harm ploy, had failed. This made them realize that to win me back, they would need more extreme measures. Isabel was the first to act. She used her connections and money to secretly investigate the second Capitol hospital where Willow was staying. She naively believed that by pressuring the hospital and stripping Willow of the best treatment environment, she could force her to return, thereby severing the fragile link between us. However, she never could have dreamed that Willow wasn't in any ordinary hospital, but in a medical facility attached to a top-tier national research institute, protected at the highest level. Her business tactics were like an egg trying to break a stone. I didn't even have to lift a finger. Isabel's petty schemes were effortlessly neutralized by an unseen force, which even attracted an inquiry of concern from the relevant authorities, causing minor trouble for her own company's operations. I received this news while standing in the courtyard of my room. In the center of the yard sat a large copper brazier. I had brought out everything from the storage room that was related to the three Hawthorne sisters over the years. There were the stuffed animals, toy cars, and transforming robots they had given me as a child. There were the suits, ties, and cufflinks they had perfunctorily given me after I grew up. just to maintain a superficial relationship. And the love letter I had carefully prepared but never had the chance to give, which Sophia had thrown into the trash right in front of me. I piled all these items, which carried the weight of my past life's foolishness and humility, into the brazier. Then, I struck a match and tossed it in. Whoosh, flames shot up instantly, greedily devouring those so-called memories. I watched, expressionless, the firelight dancing in my pupils like cold flames. "Sincere Blackwood, what are you doing?" A sharp cry came from the villa. Isabel, Sophia, and Rosalind rushed over. When they saw the blazing fire in the yard and the familiar items turning to ash, their faces went deathly pale. They broke down. What was burning wasn't just a few old objects. What was burning was the last remaining connection between us, the so-called link they could use to make amends and repent. It was the last shred of evidence they thought they could use to awaken my old feelings. No, Sophia was the first to lose control. She charged toward the brazier like a madwoman, ignoring the searing heat, and tried to reach in to save a Patek Philippe watch that was already blackened and warped. "Sincere, don't burn it. That was the first birthday gift I ever gave you. Please give it back to me." The intense heat instantly seared her fingertips, making her scream in agony, yet she kept her eyes fixed on the watch as if it were her life. "Sincere Blackwood, are you insane? Stop it." Isabel had also lost her usual composure. She wanted to find water, but found her legs were too weak to hold her up. Rosalind collapsed directly onto the ground, her tears mixing with the dirt on her face, a pathetic sight. She sobbed uncontrollably, begging over and over, "Brother Sincere, please, stop burning them. We know we were wrong. We really do." Their cries, their pleas, were nothing but grating noise to my ears. I stood by the fire, the flames casting my shadow long and indifferent. I calmly watched their disgraceful display until the last flicker of flame consumed the final corner of the love letter. I spoke slowly, my voice not loud, but it struck their hearts like a heavy hammer. "From the moment I died, these things, just like all of you—" I paused, looking at their eyes, wide with terror, and gave a cruel smile. "Became trash, and there will never be a place for you in my life again." The flames finally began to die down. A gust of wind blew the ashes from the brazier, scattering them into a gray streak across the air before they vanished completely. Just like my pathetic past life. Sophia's hand was burned, but she seemed to feel no pain, just staring blankly at the empty brazier. Isabel and Rosalind sat slumped on the ground, their eyes vacant, as if their souls had been ripped out. Their hearts, along with the ashes, had turned to dust. It was only at this moment that they truly, despairingly understood. Sincere Blackwood wasn't just angry with them. He was truly going to erase them from his world, along with the entire past, completely, cleanly, without leaving a single trace. After the burning incident, a strange, deathly silence fell over the Hawthorne mansion. The three sisters were like soulless puppets, wandering around in a daze all day. They no longer came before me to perform their clumsy acts, only occasionally watching me from afar at a turn in the hallway with eyes full of fear, despair, and pleading. Time passed quickly, and soon it was the day of my 21st birthday banquet. The Hawthorne estate was brilliantly lit, filled with guests. Nearly every prominent figure in the city had arrived. Everyone knew that tonight was not just the birthday party for the adopted son, but also the moment the next heir of the Hawthorne family would be decided. The three Hawthorne sisters, like prisoners awaiting their death sentence, made one last struggle. They wore meticulously chosen expensive gowns and exquisite makeup, their faces plastered with forced, fawning smiles as they moved among the guests, trying to create a facade of family harmony and sisterly love. Sophia, in particular, stuck to my side, repeatedly trying to take my arm, only to be subtly rebuffed each time. The panic in her eyes was too great to be concealed by any amount of foundation. Halfway through the banquet, the music faded, and all the lights focused on the main stage. Mr. Hawthorne, holding a microphone, walked onto the stage with a beaming face and announced loudly, "Distinguished guests, thank you all for coming to my son Sincere's birthday party tonight. As per the agreement made by my late father, today, Sincere will choose one of my 3 daughters to be his wife, and together, they will inherit the entire Hawthorne family enterprise." As he finished, the hall erupted in thunderous applause and envious murmurs. "It has to be Miss Sophia," Everyone knows Sincere has been in love with her for years. Yes, a perfect match. Made in heaven? Amidst the chatter, Sophia nervously clenched her fists, forcing a triumphant smile onto her face. Isabel and Rosalind, however, were deathly pale, staring at me as if trying to pin me to the spot with their gazes. Mr. Hawthorne smiled at me. Sincere, come on up. Tell everyone who you've chosen. I straightened the suit Willow had designed for me and walked onto the stage. Under the spotlight, I could clearly see the starkly different expressions on the three sisters' faces below. Just as I was about to speak, Sophia could no longer contain herself. She lifted her skirt and rushed to my side, standing almost shoulder to shoulder with me. She wanted to create the impression in front of everyone that we were already a destined couple. She even grabbed another microphone before I could. Her voice choked with emotion, and began her final, most desperate confession. Sincere, uncles and aunts, before Sincere makes his announcement, I'd like to say a few words. The hall fell silent, everyone looking at her with curiosity. Tears streamed from Sophia's eyes as she gazed at me lovingly, her voice trembling. Sincere, I know we weren't good enough to you before. We made you suffer so much. Even in our last, she stopped abruptly, as if realizing what she'd said, her face turning white, but it was too late. Her unfinished phrase, in our last life, had terrified Isabel and Rosalind, who were watching from below. The guests erupted in a confused murmur at her nonsensical words. I watched her one-woman show with a cold, impassive heart. I interrupted her, taking the microphone from her hand. My voice, clear and calm, carried throughout the entire banquet hall. Miss Hawthorne, the second speech is very moving, but I believe she may have misunderstood something. I didn't look at her instantly frozen face. Instead, I turned, my gaze piercing through the crowd to land precisely on the girl who had just returned from the Capitol, standing quietly in a corner, watching me in silence. Willow Hawthorne. She was wearing a pale lavender gown tonight, which made her fair skin look even more translucent. She still had that cool, gentle demeanor, but her eyes held a firmness and warmth that others lacked. Under the astonished stares of all the guests, I walked off the stage, step by step, through the crowd and straight to Willow. Then, amidst a collective gasp from the audience, I knelt on one knee, took a ring I had prepared from my pocket and held it up high. My eyes reflected only her. My voice was filled with a depth of feeling and solemnity it had never held before. Willow, in our past life you collected my bones. In this life, let me protect you for a lifetime. Will you marry me? The entire hall was deathly silent. Everyone was stunned by this completely subversive turn of events. Sophia stood on the stage like a statue instantly weathered by the wind. The blood drained from her face. She stared in disbelief at me kneeling before Willow, her body swaying. No, impossible, she muttered, then let out a piercing scream. Why? Sincere Blackwood, you were supposed to choose me. She lifted her skirt and charged down from the stage like a madwoman, trying to pull me away. Isabel and Rosalind also completely broke down, rushing forward to stop it. Sincere, you can't choose her. She's just a sickly thing, brother. Sincere, are you still just trying to spite us? Don't do this. I ignored their madness, focusing only on Willow. Her eyes were red, shimmering with tears. She looked at me, then slowly, solemnly, nodded. The moment I placed the ring on her finger, Sophia finally reached me, screaming hysterically, "Why?" We already know we were wrong. We've been trying so hard to make it up to you. Why won't you even look back at us? I stood up, pulling Willow tightly into my arms, protecting her. For the first and last time, I looked back at them, at the three faces twisted by jealousy and despair. I smiled, a smile of immense scorn and cruelty. I raised the microphone, announcing the world's most brutal truth to them and to everyone present. Your remorse was never for me. It was for yourselves. You weren't afraid of my pain. You were afraid of repeating the fate where Ethan Miller cheated you out of everything, leaving you destitute and turning on each other. Your tears, your repentance, your so-called love, I paused, my every word like a final judgment, is cheap and selfish. Boom, my words were like a thunderclap from the heavens, striking the three Hawthorne sisters with full force. Their biggest, darkest secret was laid bare, bloody and raw, in front of the entire city's elite. Their final shred of dignity was torn to pieces. Under the shocked, contemptuous, and understanding gazes of all the guests, Everything Isabel, Sophia, and Rosalind had ever been proud of came crashing down. They collapsed to the floor, their faces ashen. The judgment was over. As my voice faded, the banquet hall, after a moment of dead silence, erupted into a tsunami of shocked conversation. My God, what does he mean? Cheated out of everything, last life, remorse? What on earth is going on with this family? So that's what the Hawthorne sisters are like. Sincere Blackwood has had it rough. Speculation, disdain, and pity gazes like 1,000 sharp needles pierced the three sisters who lay collapsed on the floor. Their celebrated beauty, talent, and status now only served as a laughable backdrop to their inner ugliness. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne stood on the stage, their faces ashen, nearly collapsing from the shock of the stunning revelations. They looked at their three disgraced, exposed biological daughters, then at Willow, frail but with a determined gaze, held in my arms. Their eyes filled with shock, disappointment, and finally, understanding. They finally understood all the bizarre events that had plagued their home recently. Mr. Hawthorne took a deep breath, raised the microphone, and announced with all his might, "My apologies to you all for tonight's spectacle. I declare that Sincere Blackwood's choice is the Hawthorne family's choice from this day forward. Willow Hawthorne is the sole heir to the Hawthorne family." His words were the final verdict, extinguishing the sisters' last glimmer of hope. Security guards quickly approached and escorted the three sisters, who were now dazed and muttering to themselves, out of the hall. As she was being dragged away, Sophia looked back with a venomous and desperate glare, repeating over and over, Why did you come back too?" The banquet ended abruptly, but the story of the Hawthorne family's drama spread like wildfire throughout high society. After that, the fate of the three sisters derailed like a runaway train, hurtling toward the abyss they feared at a speed even faster than in their past life. Mr. Hawthorne, completely disillusioned, cast them out of the family with only a meager severance to live on. Having lost their only lifeline, Sincere Blackwood, the tragic fate of their past life descended upon them in a more cruel and direct manner. Without the Hawthorne halo, Isabel's company soon went bankrupt due to mismanagement and prior illicit activities, leaving her buried in debt. Sophia, having lost her creative inspiration and financial support, descended into a haze of madness and alcoholism. One rainy night, she died in a drunk driving accident, her car plunging off an overpass. Rosalind, her reputation ruined, was blacklisted by the entertainment industry. Unwilling to accept her fate, she tried to latch on to other wealthy men but was swindled out of her money and dignity, eventually disappearing into the city's sordid underbelly. They blamed each other, hated each other, each believing the others had ruined her life. They lived out their pathetic existence in poverty and endless regret, the very ending they had been reborn, trying so desperately to escape. As for Ethan Miller, having been driven away by the sisters early on, he never got the chance to get close to the family again, let alone repeat his past life's deception. He ended up as just another ordinary person at the bottom of society, living a mediocre and unnoticed life. What goes around comes around. It was poetic justice. 1 year later, Willow and I held our wedding on a sun-drenched island. She wore a pure white gown, her face glowing with happiness. As we exchanged rings, she confessed her biggest secret to me: she was never frail or sickly. Her true identity was that of a lead researcher on a top-secret national scientific project. Her long stays at the research institute in the capital were for her work, which was disguised as medical treatment for confidentiality. I smiled and squeezed her hand, whispering in her ear, "I know." Her eyes widened in surprise. I continued, "In our past life, the connections and methods you used to avenge me were not something an ordinary girl could possess." Tears welled in Willow's eyes. She hadn't realized I remembered even those details. I pulled her into my arms and whispered the promise that was a lifetime late. After the wedding, I transferred all the assets from the Hawthorne family and my own parents to her. From now on, I'll be in charge of making money to support the family, and you'll be in charge of being beautiful and continuing to bring glory to our country," I told her with a grin. Willow laughed at my teasing. She stood on her tiptoes and placed a gentle kiss on my lips, her eyes sparkling like stars. Our life after marriage was peaceful and happy. We moved out of the Hawthorne mansion and into a new home I had prepared for us. The yard was filled with the white roses she loved. On another sunny afternoon, I came home after finishing work to find Willow sitting on a swing in the garden, basking in the sunlight, quietly reading a book. Her belly was just beginning to show, and her face radiated a maternal glow. I walked over and gently hugged her from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder. "What are you reading?" "A parenting guide," she said, turning to smile at me. The sunlight gilded the side of her face, making her look breathtakingly beautiful. I leaned down and kissed her cheek, whispering, "It's so good to have you in this life." Willow put down her book, turned around, and wrapped her arms around my neck. She looked up at me, her eyes reflecting my image, clear and focused. She said earnestly, "This is how we were always meant to be." Yes, stripped of all pretense, after living through 2 lifetimes. This was it.